Howdy, fellas. We're going to take a look at this game published by GMT, designed by Mark Simonitch, who is a very good game designer as well as illustrator. This is the U.S. Civil War. I'll tell you a little bit of a story about this game. I recently ordered the second edition printing of this, or P500. I should have it next week, I'm hoping. The reason I did so was I bought this game my first or second time at Gen Con, and it was at the Cool Stuff booth, and it was marked down, damaged. Well, I looked at it, and the damage is just, I'll show it to you. Yeah, that's the damage to the box on the lid. This is the lid. That's the inside. And then on this part, it's damaged like that. So I got it for a good price. Now you have to remember, my first time or second time at Gen Con was a number of years ago. I'm talking about 7, 8 years ago, maybe. So and ever since then, this was sitting on my shelf with my my collection of games. So in my head, after not seeing this game for 5, 7 years, in my head, I remembered, there was damage to the box. So I'm thinking in my head, oh man, it was, the box is really screwed up and damaged pretty bad. So that's why I justified getting the second edition copy. So now that the second edition copy is coming, that I'm going to put in my collection. This one I pulled out to review and, of course, to punch, clip, and play at some point. So as I pulled it out and I saw this damage to the box again, I'm like, wait a minute. That's not nowhere. Now, remember, in my head, I'm thinking this whole corner's crushed. And then after I actually pull it out and look at it 5, 7 years later, I'm like, well, it's not as bad as I thought it was. If I would have known that, well, you know what? Too late now. So we're going to take a quick component look at the U.S. Civil War by GMT Games. You get a full-color glossy rulebook. Great artwork. Looks like a pretty good rulebook. It comes in at 40 pages, but that's on the end. The index is page 40, designer's notes on 38, hints, examples. So there's really, here's scenarios, advanced rules. There's really only 22 pages of rules, and the rest are scenarios, notes, examples, and so forth. Here's your examples and the explanations of all the units. The game's basically driven by the generals, which have a name, a rank, attack rating, defense rating, turn of entry, arrival location, and movement allowance. And then there's these other generals that are of lower rank. They don't have pictures of them, and they are only used when operating independently. These ratings on the thing. For the most part, it's all strength points. 1 strength point's equal to about 5,000 men, and it's all strength point driven. Then you have all kinds of other markers and administrative and otherwise. You have forts, entrenchments, you have destroyed, arsenal, demoralized, control markers, surrender points, different things. Here we have our sequence of play, which starts with a reinforcement phase with a bunch of sub-steps. The Confederate reinforcement segment. Oh, I'm sorry. Union reinforcement segment, then the Confederate reinforcement segment is the reinforcement phase. The second phase of the game is the strategic movement phase, where the Union moves, then the Confederates move. Then there's a leader management phase, followed by the action cycle, and at which point you conduct action phases 1 through 4. Then there's the end phase with some sub-phases below that. Then it starts detailing the different phases. There's the action phase, movement, control of hexes and areas, generals, cavalry, reaction movement, fortifications. Here's your battle rules. Demoralization and rally, supply, reinforcements, strategic movement, leader management, special rules. Special rules begin on page 18. Here's the end phase and automatic victory, special actions, on page 20 at rule set 20 is naval rules. Then it says here, stop. You have read enough for all the scenarios. They recommend you play it at least once before moving on to the advanced rules. On page 22, we have the advanced rules, which include some advanced naval rules, which look pretty in-depth. Oh, wow. Yeah. Pretty in-depth indeed. Here it's going into the repair, shipyards and repairing naval vessels. And then you have, beginning on page 27, just a series of optional rules. Then on page 28, you have your scenarios. There's the 1861 scenario, the 1862 scenario, 1863 scenario. Then there's the campaign game, which is everything rolled into a big, giant game of funness. And then you have your credits here. Oh, did Mark Simonitch do the map too? How much you want to bet he did? Yep, map art, Mark Simonitch. Then there's examples of play, notes on the map, special hexes and spaces, hints on play and designer notes, and an index on the back, which is always awesome to have. Then we have a Union, I'm sorry, what's this? Union Army display. There's 4 different armies. Instead of cluttering up the map, you can put who's under whose command and what's not in each one. There's a Union one, and here's the Confederate one. We have a Union setup chart. This is for the 1863 scenario. This is for the 1861 scenario. Then we have a Confederate setup chart for the 1861 scenario and the 1863 scenario. Then we have 2 player aids that are identical. You have your CRT, different tables. It's a bifold that opens up. You have your supply attrition table, supply matrix, your list of actions and special actions. Sequence of play is actually in here. That's great. Interceptions, naval stuff. And then on the back, there's a terrain effects chart. It's great. You get 2 copies of that, one for each player. Then you have your counter sheets. There are 1, 2, 3. These are your Confederate generals and markers. These are your Union generals and markers. Then you have your strength point markers. This is Union in blue and Confederate in butternut. Fortification markers, gray for the Confederates, blue for the Union. And again, these numbers are just strength points. And on the reverse side, they have the ones. Here's some more. Ooh, look, this one's poaching right. Put that back in there. These are entrenchment markers, naval markers for each side, foraging markers, surrender, destroyed markers, some more administrative stuff. There's also a small deck of cards. These are special actions. I'm not sure. Briefly read the rules. I still got these wrapped up. I'm not going to break them out. But there's cards that can also be played in this game for special actions. It comes with some dice. 3 red, 3 blue. Little tiny guys. Then you have your map. There's 2 of them. It's mounted. The maps are mounted, and you have a box insert that holds everything in here. I'm only going to open up one of these maps because they're heavy and they're big, and I frankly don't have the table space. All right, hold on. All right, well, here's the eastern part of the map. There's a more western part that goes over this way, but here's basically the east coast of the U.S., about halfway down through Florida, roughly. You know, Georgia, South, North Carolina, Virginia, and so on. Let's see, there's Charleston, West Virginia. There's Summersville. I grew up in Beckley, which is probably about, there's the Gauley Bridge. Summersville, Beckley's probably in this hex right here. That's where I grew up as a boy. But anyway, there's the map. It's a beautiful map, very clearly illustrated. Beautiful map, as you would expect by Mark Simonitch. You have your rail lines, your towns, your cities, mountains, forests, clear terrain. There's Richmond, Virginia right here. Fredericksburg. There's D.C. Philadelphia. Good looking map. And this is only one of them. There's another one that's just as big as this one that continues the map on over towards the west. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching another video. This was a quick component overview of the U.S. Civil War by GMT Games. And it's an old game. It's published back in 2015. Whoa, focus. Published back in 2015. I probably bought this. I might have got this in 2015 or let me think. I can't remember the first time I went to Gen Con, but we've went every year for about 5 years, except for the last 2. So I don't know, but anyway, thanks for watching this video, guys. Focus. All right, have a good one.